and welcome to Addicted to Murder. This is Courtney, licensed professional counselor with over a decade of experience.
And this is Trisha, and I don't really care for brickins.
Brickins? Is that like a brick chicken?
I mean, I would maybe rather have that. I guess I like this in the Tobiko category, but I don't care for just caviar.
Oh, I've never heard of caviar called
Brickins.
brickins before.
Brichins. But, yeah, I don't know. But anyways,
Tobiko is delicious.
Right. It doesn't, to me, it's more like of a texture like a poppy,
Right.
as opposed to like fish squishing in your mouth. Fish
Right, yeah.
cakes. But,
That's true.
you know, I've never had like the super fancy expensive caviar, so maybe that makes a difference.
That's true. I don't know that I have either.
I was just picturing it like salty and
It just kind of tastes like the ocean.
yeah. So yeah, we're back for Keith Jesperson Part 2, aka the Smiley Face Killer.
Yes.
So before that, though, Courtney, do you have a question?
I do. I thought we'd be a little nostalgic today. So my question for you is, what was your, favorite childhood stuffed animal?
I didn't really do stuffed animals, to be honest. I guess what comes to mind is I had a Scooby-Doo. And he was
okay.
pretty big. There's pictures of me with it. So I think that's probably it. But I didn't sleep with stuffed animals. I tried and they just fall. They just end up on the floor.
Oh, okay.
My sister was very much into stuffed animals. She probably still has some.
Okay.
Oh, wait. I did have one called Duckard. But I think that one went to my sister. So, how about you?
I had a teddy bear named Clara that I got. I want to say, I think I got her when I was 2.
Okay.
And I still have her. She
Aw.
does not sleep on my bed anymore, but she exists in my house.
Is she raggedy?
Surprisingly not. I was always very gentle with her. So she
Yeah.
still looks, she's in pretty good shape for being a 35-year-old teddy bear.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
Standard teddy bear. It's a classic
Yep.
for a reason.
Classic, brown fur, black nose.
Good old Teddy Roosevelt introducing the teddy bear.
Exactly.
Okay, well, good question, Courtney.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a quick recap of what we learned last week?
Yes. So last week we learned about little Keith and learned that he was a middle child who was largely ignored by his family. His father was an abusive alcoholic. Keith was a large boy who was shy and struggled with school and social situations. He learned to hunt with his dad and soon made a pastime of torturing and killing animals. And when he did finally make a friend, they got into all sorts of trouble, including burning down an abandoned house.
Yeah, I think that was old Joe Smokewater. And then we left off with him moving.
Right.
Yeah.
They had just moved from Canada down to Washington.
Yeah. So it was the town of Selah, or Selah? You said you've heard of it, so do you know how to pronounce it?
I think it's Selah.
Selah? Okay. So 4 hours south of Chilliwack, where they were. And Keith was now about 12 years old. And all of the siblings were upset with the move. And it sounds like they moved into a nice big house. And Les was an avid landscaper and did a lot with his property. Keith was enrolled into the end of the school year because of just when they moved. But luckily for Keith, who wasn't a great scholar, Canadian schools were a lot tougher than American schools, so he was actually ahead of his classmates for once. So he said he just basically had to show up. Unfortunately, he never really connected with his classmates in Selah. The kids thought he was strange. Quote, "I was considered an immigrant, a foreigner. The Selah kids made fun of my clothes, my shoes, my accent." And he was almost a 6-foot-tall 6th grader at this point. His sister noticed a change in Keith after the move. He became more crude and morbid in their conversations. His brothers gave him nicknames that the school kids caught on to. So he was basically teased at school by his classmates, and he was basically teased at home by his brothers. Keith pretty much just played with his dog Duke, and making new friends wasn't really that important to him anymore. So Keith started to shoplift. He would slide stuff up his sleeve. He and another boy got caught. The police took them to the school and made an example out of them, kind of like humiliating them. They then got booked and fingerprinted. The police told them to tell their parents or they would be put in jail. So Keith blurted this out, and his father wasn't really surprised. But instead of the belt, and it might be because he was nearly as big as his dad now, Keith had to apologize to the shop owner, and he had to work for free to pay off the debt. Soon after, Keith got into his first fist fight and knocked a kid's tooth out. And he claims he didn't start it, but because of his size, he was blamed. Keith's now in 8th grade and a social outcast, and he gets deeper and deeper into his fantasy world. Courtney?
So Keith has now experienced a pattern of social ostracism and rejection. He's now been repeatedly rejected and ignored by his parents and siblings, and then made fun of by his peers at multiple schools. It would make sense that Keith would try to avoid these feelings of rejection by self-isolating and using fantasy and imagination to create a world in which he felt safe and in control.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I sometimes when I read about these kids, I put myself in their situations, or what it'd be like to have a kid who was like a social outcast and how hard that would be as a parent.
Absolutely.
And how hard it would be as that kid.
Especially kind of in middle school, when that's sort of when your peers start to become the most important people in your life.
Yeah. Well, a relative came by to the Jesperson household, and he told his stories about his time in the Vietnam War. He talked to Keith about killing people and about torturing them. He spoke about making the women scream and how they had all suffered. Keith said the stories and the accompanying photo album that this guy brought really aroused him, and it reminded him of how powerful he felt killing all those animals back in Canada. There were fewer animals to kill where he was now, but when he would find one, he would torture it until it stopped moving. Sick shit he would do to the stray cats. And I apologize for not having that trigger warning. There will be, unfortunately, more of this animal stuff coming out, so just be forewarned. At age 14, Keith and his brothers worked for their father. It was mostly manual labor. He had some sort of factory where he'd make bullets or something like that. And Keith always would get the worst of the jobs, and he and his brothers pretty much loathed each other at this point. In fact, he said after this working experience, his brothers were just dead to him. He had a checking account, and he had to pay his father rent. Well, apparently all of the kids were supposed to pay him rent, but only Keith was actually paying the rent. And when he found out his brothers didn't have to pay rent, and after his mom went to bat for him, his father stopped charging his 14-year-old son rent. Only Keith. When he asked for the money back, Les, as he had said many times before to Keith, said, quote, "Consider it a life experience." Courtney, his father, strongly seems to favor his other sons. What does this do?
This type of blatant favoritism can be especially damaging to a young person's sense of self-worth. Being treated differently, especially in a negative way, could have led Keith to believe that he was somehow defective or worthless or unlovable. And with boys especially, these feelings often get expressed through anger, violence, and self-destructive behaviors.
I mean, I can see why it'd be so frustrating. I don't know. And he loved his dad. He wanted his dad's approval so much.
Exactly.
Granted, the book that we're using is from Keith. And I can tell by reading it that he is definitely embellishing and pushing a lot of blame onto everybody else in his life.
Sure.
But I don't think he's, because other parts of his, or other people in his families said that Les treated him the worst.
Right.
Keith was around him the most.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, what little boy doesn't, in some way, want to be just like their dad?
Yeah. Keith was too shy, and he was just kind of too busy because he worked a lot to have a girlfriend. He did like girls, though. When he did end up necking with girls, he was too naive or too shy to go very far. And his dad found out about his, female troubles and made fun of him for this. He did recollect that he was raped by a girl of 18 when he was 14, and that this put him, his, quote, sexuality into overdrive. I don't know that was ever confirmed or whatever, but that is what he said. Keith went into high school with a D average. His middle school reputation as kind of a nerd followed him to high school. The kids called him names like Igor, like from the Frankenstein movies. He was so naive and gullible that people took advantage of him. They'd play jokes on him, borrow money, and then never pay it back. So especially girls would do this, it sounds like. They knew he had money because he was always working, and then they'd ask for it, and then they just never paid him back. So that's just mean. So even though he was a big guy, he didn't usually like use his obvious strength or stature to get people to stop fucking with him or to pay him back. Just kind of let it go. Keith saw that the ladies liked athletes, so he went out for the football team. His coach wanted him to hurt opposing players, which he did, and I guess he didn't want to, but his coach was like, do it, Jesperson. He broke one of the players' legs, and another one, he broke their ribs. Keith said he didn't want to hurt anybody, and his heart wasn't in it, so he dropped football after a few games. So he switched to wrestling. His parents would watch his brothers play, and probably his sisters too, but it didn't seem like they could be bothered to watch Keith. So not all of his childhood was sad. He did have horses. It seems like the farm animals he had, he was fine with, that he left them alone. He hunted, and he was the best fisherman of the family. Everyone acknowledged that he had some crazy luck with the fishing or skill.
He's the fish whisperer.
Yeah. Alcohol was a big part of his childhood. Not Keith imbibing, but he had his dad. You know, we've talked about this alcoholism. And his dad had a, quote, open bottle policy at home where the kids could drink whatever they want as long as it was at the house. Keith did not like the loss of control that came with imbibing. So he really wasn't drinking that much. Keith got a car when he turned 16, and he would use it to drive to wooded areas to shoot more animals for what seemed like fun. He would take out each animal's, leg at a time, like each leg at a time, to improve his aim, and he would enjoy watching them suffer. He didn't discriminate as long as the animals were not his. So as I said, it just keeps going with this guy. He's shooting and harming animals, and it just hurts my heart. Courtney, we haven't checked in for a minute.
Right. There's something about the idea of hurting innocent animals that I think is a very human response.
Yeah.
But it seems like Keith is really trying to do everything he can think of to be accepted and feel loved by others, but to no avail. He didn't fight back or stand up for himself when he was taken advantage of, so he would not lose even the sort of false sense of belonging that he experienced from others. There was so much that he could not control in his life, being bullied, being abused by his father, by his size, that it tracks that he would make decisions to keep what little control he did have, like not drinking. And I also think that his excessive animal abuse could have stemmed from a place of feeling powerful and in control over these animals, which he didn't feel in any other part of his life. It was sort of the one place where he was the powerful one.
Right. Yeah, totally. I assume that's kind of the reason why a lot of people do things like that and why they also hurt other humans. Power element.
Yep.
Duke, Keith's beloved dog, lived well into old age, I think like 14, before it passed away. He passed away. His father told him that the dog must have gotten into some poison, and so his dad, I think, shot the dog. Keith was heartbroken. He felt that his father had murdered his dog. So to get even with his father, he started to mistreat his dad's dogs, delighting when they began to suffer from old age or, Keith's mistreatment. Keith got his first girlfriend when he was a senior in high school. He had lettered in wrestling by then. The girlfriend didn't last, and he injured his leg when he climbed a rope, and his huge-ass body pulled it from the ceiling, and he fell down hard. It was like, the ones in gym class where you have to climb to the top.
Yep.
And he never could. And they were razzing him up, his classmates or gym teacher, something so much that he finally tried. And when he got up there, it just fell. And he fell hard. He would graduate, but he was not a college-bound kid. He barely scraped by in high school. And it wasn't because he wasn't intelligent, but he just didn't like it. When Keith graduated, he worked for his father, who had gotten into an accident and he couldn't work anymore, at least at this time, his dad. And Keith was working 7 days a week. So when he fell, he ended up having to have several surgeries on his foot. And his mother also needed him. So he said, quote, "This was my life for almost a year. It gave me a funny feeling as though I wasn't really somebody, just one of my father's tools, an accessory." Keith wanted his dad to pay for him to go to school to be a game warden, but his father refused, saying there was no money in being a game warden. And remember, his dad is all about money and what can make money. Keith's siblings were all in college, pursuing various passive study, but Keith remained his father's workhorse. Courtney?
Physical strength was kind of the only thing of value that his father saw in him. And as a result, providing this type of physical manual labor was a way that Keith could connect positively with his dad. If he had gone to college, he would no longer be useful to his dad.
Right. And he unfortunately couldn't get a scholarship. Like, he got accepted to some schools, but not on scholarship. So he needed his dad to pay for tuition.
Right.
Yeah. When Keith was 19, he met a 17-year-old girl named Rose. His dad encouraged him to get married, even though Keith did not love Rose. And Rose just wanted out of her house. So I don't really know that she loved Keith either. And he was her ticket to freedom. Well, the two ended up getting married in 1975. I suppose in some ways the marriage mutually benefited the pair, although I have a feeling it's pretty much doomed based on the reasons they got married. We will see. Keith worked in Yakima at a lumber company. Unfortunately, his foot needed yet another surgery, and that forced him to go back to working with his father, and he could not seem to get away from his dad. So the two of them bought a mobile home that was pretty close to his parents' house, he and Rose. His dad had a trailer park that him and Keith had built. So they built like the pads and all of the stuff. And there were many tenants at this trailer park. And with those tenants came their animals. And if those animals were not leashed or in the units, they were fair game to Keith. Keith continued to kill and torture domestic animals as well as any strays that were around. The book again goes into details on how he did this, but I'm not gonna. Courtney, honestly, of all the serial killers we've covered, this is by far the most I've had to read about the torturing of animals, because he's an adult now. I'm not sure if Keith's actions were more animal killing than the author's description, or if the author just got really descriptive and put it all in. Like, I don't know if he's doing more than other killers we've covered, or we're just getting more coverage of what he's doing. Do you think in typical situations this type of behavior cools off with time, or do you think it intensifies? We've researched that sociopathy tends to cool off as adults get older, and I truly hope that it is the case in most situations.
Yeah. So I can't say for sure, but I think, part of why this research includes so much detailed description of Keith's actions could be that he was involved with the authoring of the book. So he can describe these memories in ways that, like, other biographers who aren't working with the subject just can't. And, Keith may have purposely included all of these incidents of animal abuse in his story as a way to demonstrate his power, his depravity, and maybe a reason for readers to be afraid of him. Kind of like what you were saying before, that, like, it's embellished probably to a certain degree.
I hope so.
Yeah. And then when it comes to violence and serial killers, historically we've seen that the violence continues to escalate over time until essentially a human victim is killed. So as of yet, there's no humans involved. So following the path of serial killing, it would make sense that his animal abuse would continue until he finally crosses that line. And then as for, that part about, like, sociopathy sort of cooling off as people get older, I think that is looking more into, like, older, like getting into, like, midlife, into past midlife.
I think the number I saw was 40.
Right. Yeah. So Keith is still, like,
20
in his 20s right now. So
it's still got a ways to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the number that's popping in my head is, like, around 40. A lot of people chill out with their antisocial behaviors.
Right.
But that's the most destructive time of someone's life is 0 to 40.
Exactly.
You do a lot of damage.
Yep.
Well, Keith did get a settlement for his foot. I think it was like $30,000, and he put that money into a business with his father. Rose, his wife, was also working for the business as a bookkeeper. Rose declared that she wanted children. They tried for 6 months before Keith's sperm count was deemed low. The family businesses started to fail, and 2 years later, they actually had to sell it. Keith had odd jobs before he discovered life as a long-haul trucker. They had their first son, so they were eventually successful with children. His name was Jason in 1980. His wife had this to say about him and the kids as they ended up having 3 kids altogether. Quote, "He adored our kids. He always had one in his lap. He made a plastic carrier on the back of his bike so he could carry them around wherever he went. At Christmas time, he gave piles of gifts." So Keith and his father were getting along better now, but he warned his dad that if his dad ever babysit his kids, that he was never to hit them, ever. His truck driving kept him on the road 3 to 4 weeks out of the month. So this, would put a strain on a marriage, and it did. He and Rose would go on to have 3 children together, like I said, 1 son and 2 daughters. Keith's mother died in 1985 when Keith was 30 years old of metastatic cancer. Keith was there at her side on her deathbed and was able to tell her goodbye. During this time, Keith was changing jobs a lot. Sometimes he was fired for doing shady things. Other times he was just laid off. So with that, his family was moving around a lot, and Rose was getting sick of it. Neither of them were very good with money, and they would eventually file for bankruptcy. Courtney, any thoughts?
So it makes sense that Keith would be an attentive, involved father as a response to his being abused and rejected by his own parents as a child, right? He knew firsthand how awful that felt and didn't want to do that to his own kids. And as for the constantly changing jobs, right, this is a well-established behavior of those with antisocial personality disorder who struggle to follow the rules or connect to the social cultures of a job. So frequent job changes.
So you think
kind of par for the course.
We're talking that he's got ASPD.
I'd say at this point that would be.
Do you see anything else?
Well, I mean, obviously the cruelty to animals, the sort of like lacking emotion in a lot of ways. Like we don't really hear him talk about being emotional. Or having a lot of empathy for others, that vindictiveness. We talked a little bit more about that last time, right? Where if something was done to him, he had to get back.
Right.
So, like, getting back at his dad by hurting his dogs when he thought his dad had murdered his dog. I think just several traits we're seeing. Petty crimes, shoplifting, things like that. I think he would solidly fit into antisocial personality disorder at this point in his life.
He does. There's not a lot of emotionality in this book, and if it is, it's all about poor me type of thing.
Exactly.
Keith was unfaithful to Rose for the first time in 1986 with a pair of swingers. After the store was opened, he started to hook up with more and more people, especially when he was on the road trucking. Keith was insatiable, and when Rose wasn't around, he would find other means. And when she was around, it really wasn't her cup of tea what Keith wanted and how often. Keith was escalating on the road with his women, and he began to assault them. He raped some. At this time, he was super paranoid about what he was doing. He talked about feeling bad. I don't know if he really did, but it might have been more of a paranoia of getting caught than guilt.
Right.
When he was home, he continued to kill the neighborhood animals. He even killed his son's dog. His kids were horrified by what he did. Every time it got so bad that every time they saw an animal and they were with their dad, they would yell at their dad not to kill it. So he was not hiding this from his kids. They had witnessed too many animal tortures by him. Keith started experimenting with killing. He had found a new way to do it. He would drown the animal, then bring it back when it could breathe, and then he would drown it again, bring it back, over and over until eventually it was dead. He said it aroused him, and it was definitely a precursor of what would soon become a sick obsession with women.
Right.
We'll see that going forward. This is kind of what he does to women.
Right.
Courtney,
some foreshadowing there.
Yeah. Courtney, I think that it is definitely, Keith is starting to lose control. He's having more and more sexual encounters, some consensual, some not. And his animal killing bloodlust is only growing. He's experimenting more. He does it to blow off steam. He's also still lighting fires. I didn't really touch on this episode, but he is continuing to light fires, and we'll talk more about that next week. So, yeah.
I mean, yes, I agree. His behaviors are escalating and becoming more violent. He's starting to develop that strong connection between violence and sexual arousal, and feeling more powerful as a man through harming animals and now women. And it's no longer just a habit, it's a need that Keith has he has to engage in it in order to feel any sort of sense of relief.
Yeah. I don't want anyone to self-harm, but I would rather him hurt himself than these poor little animals and women.
Yes.
Find a positive outlet, people, I guess. Don't do either of those things. But
right.
I don't know, one of those rooms you can smash TVs.
Take up boxing
yeah,
or something.
Something like that. Suffice it to say, the marriage suffered and inevitably ended. The divorce was made final on their 13th wedding anniversary. He was now becoming a deadbeat dad. He was falling behind on child support and bills, etc. It didn't take long for Keith to find a new woman. He moved in with a woman called Peggy. I think that was a pseudonym in the book, but whatever. And she would eventually become his driving partner. She had to do like courses and shit, but then they could drive together on the road legally. Mm-hmm. He's not supposed to pick up people, right?
Right.
But if you have someone approved, then it's okay. So he and Peggy tried to make their relationship work, and their working relationship tried to make it work all around. But per Keith, Peggy was not faithful. And when she got pregnant, Keith demanded a blood test to prove it was his. And the couple pretty much ended things after that. So the Christmas season that year was not a good one for Keith. He had sold pretty much all he owned to buy his kids gifts. Peggy was on the road with another trucker, and Keith was actually kind of crashing at her house while she was out of town. She called him on the phone and told him to get out. On January 21st, 1990, he was feeling pretty shitty when he left the house, and he was just going to kill some time. So he went to a bar to play pool. It was at this bar that he met Tanya Bennett, and according to the bartender, Tanya was cognitively delayed. Keith invited her to get some food, and she agreed to go with him. He told her that before they went to the restaurant, he needed to go back to his house to get some money, and would she go with him? So she agreed. And then he said, I need to get ready for my date. Will you come in the house and wait for me? So she did. And once he had her inside, he began to try to seduce her. But she freaked out and tried to get away. He dragged her to the mattress, and apparently she was trembling in fear by this point. And he eventually raped her. And when she complained that she wanted it to be done and that she was hungry, Keith then said that he saw, quote, red. He raped her again and then punched her in the face, which he expected would knock her out, but it didn't. He hit her again and again and again, and she just stared at him. He claims to have hit her at least 20 times, all over her body. And he was a big guy. He was 6'4" by now, and the book says he went between 220 to 260 pounds, right? Like throughout his time. He said he punched her until she was unrecognizable. Even after breaking many bones in her face, she was still conscious, and she was murmuring, "Mommy, Mommy, make him stop. Make him stop, Mommy." He kind of started to have second thoughts at this point, but he knew it was too late. She would tell on him. It was obvious something happened to her. He decided he had to put her out of her misery. So he started to choke her. And as we know, it is a long and hard process. Per the book, quote, I choked her till my knuckles turned white. But every time I let loose, she gasped. This went on for 4 or 5 minutes. Why won't she die? It was frustrating. I felt like I was losing control. I was trying to do one simple thing, and I couldn't do it. The story of my life. So he then squeezed as hard as he could. She urinated, then went still. He had done it. He had murdered his first of many victims. So Courtney, before I go to you, I'm reading that and I'm looking at this, and then he turns it all about him.
Yep.
Story of my life. I can't kill her. I can't do this one simple thing.
Right. I can't even do this right.
Oh, jeez Louise. Okay. Anyways, what are your thoughts?
I mean, we have seen Keith now. He's crossed that line into murder that every serial killer experiences. And so from here on out, harming animals and sexual assault are just not going to be enough to satisfy his urges. He's experienced that ultimate power over another person, that control literally over life and death. And once you've got that, nothing can compare to it.
I'm not finished with this book yet, but throughout reading it, and I'm curious if I'm just going to ask you this because you might not even think this way, but what serial killer is he reminding you of? And you don't know all the things I do, so this might be a dumb question, but I'm just curious.
I mean, some of it, like the childhood stuff and the hunting and the animal cruelty, reminds me a little bit of Israel Keys. But I'm not sure that that's where you're going.
It's not, and I think it'll become more evident. But we'll talk about it at the end. But he reminds me of BTK.
Okay.
Not the childhood.
Right.
The other stuff. Because, I mean, he's a smiley face killer, so he's leaving messages, right?
Right. Yeah, kind of having that, mediocre life.
And having kids. I mean, a little different. I mean, BTK kept it together better.
Right.
But, yeah, I don't know. I just keep seeing BTK in my head as I'm reading more in this. So anyways, I'm curious if at the end I'll still feel the same and if maybe you'll join me.
Yeah, we'll see.
Or maybe he's just going to be his own stupid little
placeholder
in the serial killer docket out there.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, that's all I got for today.
All right.
So anything else you want to say before we stop?
Nope, I think that's a good place to end for the day.
Okay. Well, everyone stay safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.